Welcome back for video number 7 in our Top Edit Academic Writing and Publishing Bootcamp series. This video is entitled Common English Errors, and I'm going to walk you through a number of the common errors that non-native English speakers make when writing academic papers. No problem, I'm not saying that you're going to make these mistakes. I'm just going to give you some examples of the kinds of mistakes that people tend to make so that you can avoid them in your own writing in the future, part of our training program. So this is writing an academic paper. We are talking then in this presentation about basic errors in English and how you can put what we've learned from our editing and training work into the different aspects of your paper writing. I'm going to give you some insights and some ideas that you can apply to your own work to avoid common English writing mistakes. We'll get started then by looking again at this slide. Of course, you must be getting tired of seeing this slide in all of these video presentations, but it really is so important. The general structure of an academic article consists of 2 sections, ladies and gentlemen: the title and the authors, and the abstract and the keywords. The title and the abstract, that's the first section of academic writing, and then the main text of the paper. 2 different sections. How can you be effective in your English writing to maximize your impact, your discoverability, and your publishability with these different sections? We have talked about writing great academic titles and abstracts. I've given you templates and tricks and insights in order to do this, making your title and your abstract easy for indexing and searching. They need to be informative, attractive, and effective, of course. Moving into the main text of your paper, the IMRAD structure, this of course has an average length of between 5,000 and 6,000 words. The introduction then has an average length in effective, balanced academic writing of around 1,500 words. The word counts are low, ladies and gentlemen. How can you be effective with such small numbers of words? We are here to help you. I'm going to show you how you can do this with your English language writing. In particular then, here are some common mistakes that people make in their academic writing in the introduction section. Remember, of course, as we've just mentioned, that this is a section of about 1,500 words. Be concise. Nobody wants to read excessively long studies. It would be bad to put long and non-objective text into your introduction. Limit your word count to around 10% of the total overall word count of your paper, the total overall number of words in the manuscript overall. The other big mistake that people make is to be incoherent, not to have a clear rationale for the study. You should, you will, you must present your ideas in an organized way. So, how to do this in effective English writing? Write in the present tense. The aim of this paper is to. Previous work in this area shows that. General mistake that many academic writers, especially non-native speakers, but all academic writers make, is to mix the different tenses, to start off writing in the present tense and then mix within the same section back into the past tense. We've talked before about active versus passive writing in English and how active writing is the best, most effective way to do this, writing actively, but you will see, as we will show you in this presentation, how to structure, how to use your writing effectively in the different sections of your academic papers, active, present tense in the introduction. That's something definitely to keep in mind. Now, when you talk about the work of other people in your introduction, and remember that you are going to pose a question, set the scene, and then tee up the rest of the paper by talking about what your academic article does in the rest of the introduction, talk about other people's work by using the names of authors when citing work that's been previously done. So rather than writing Hood et al. Analyzed 80 associations between macular structure and the 1020 in eyes, you can say in one previous study 80 associations were assessed. Be general when writing about the works of other people. It's important in order to be clear with your academic writing. Different writing styles, of course, highlight different aspects. When in the first example, the main element of the sentence is the author, in the second, it's the information that gains prominence. Rather than who did the previous work, we're mainly interested in that information, in that data, in getting that across in our writing. Moving then on to the methods, as we've talked about before, we're writing the methods section very importantly in the past tense. We're talking about the only aspect of your academic article writing of an area that's been done before. So, a mistake that lots of authors make when writing the methods is to write in the present or in the future tense. You are referring in your methods section to work that's already been done, not to something that will be done or is currently being done. So, talk about your methods in the past tense. General rule for successful academic writing is to do this. Introduction, present tense, methods, past tense, it's been done, the results and the discussion in the present tense also. Don't forget to include institutional review board approval in your methods section. Many authors fall down at the review stage of their articles by not providing adequate information about the approvals they have for their study. So, you will fail to pass peer review if you don't have approval by an institutional review board, for example, or ethics committee if that's the kind of work you're doing. So include in your first paragraph the information that institutional review board approval has been obtained, and this often in medical studies, in biological studies, has to be prospective. So you have to have the approval before you start the study. Other common mistakes that people make in the methods section, they don't include all of the materials that were used. We've talked before about how your methods section should be comprehensive and include enough information for somebody else, a qualified worker, to be able to repeat your study. So include all the materials you used as well as information about manufacturers using a consistent style. Often we as editors have to work on these sections because the style in the method section just isn't consistent. There's incomplete data. The materials are described in a way that makes the manuscript read like an advertisement for a particular chemical company, a biological reagent company, for example. So you should be describing all your methods thoroughly and using writing styles that distance authors from endorsing techniques or particular materials that you may have used. Include a detailed description of your analysis then, your statistical analysis. It's often, though, not necessary to talk about the particular methods that you used in detail. People often ask us about this. If you're using a common method, a common statistical method, or a common experimental method, you can cite other work. You can say the methods used in this study follow the work done previously. And don't forget to describe your analyses thoroughly. So important to get this section ready for peer review, because as you will remember, this is the main part of your paper that peer reviewers will look at, looking for issues. Ask those external reviewers to read the paper. Give it to colleagues. Talk to people. Ask your friends, your colleagues, your co-workers to help you. Is there enough information here in the method section for you to understand what I've done? This is another very common mistake that people make when putting together their methods sections. So you need to be concise. But being too concise or too verbose can be an issue. Get your data into tables and graphs in the results section that, of course, repeat what's already been described in the text. Write about the most important points and then refer to your graphs and tables that show your findings in detail. Use pictures rather than words. The biggest mistake people make in the results section is to summarize their findings in insufficient detail and only talk about what's shown in the figures. You have to do both. Talk about your figures. Those are the things you make first, of course, in the writing process, but make sure the reader is able to understand what your research shows. What's the key message that your research is getting across? So your figures are important, and we have lots of material. We'll come back with other presentations on this in future training presentations, but one big mistake that people often make is poor quality illustrations. You need, if possible, to be professional in the quality of your illustrations. There's really no excuse for this these days, given the kinds of software we have available to summarize our results, to get that message across to the audience. So in terms of figures, use your color effectively. What are these different figures trying to show? Which one of these colored figures shown here would be most appropriate for getting across the message that I want to transmit in this figure? Have a think. Which one do you like best? And don't confuse people. Here you see the same data, a series of 7 data series presented in a confusing way and presented in a clearer and more easy to understand way. Don't make these kinds of common mistakes, confusing with colors, confusing with the way you present your data series. Software is important. Make sure you are able to make consistently good, clear, unambiguous figures when putting your work together and selling it to journals. Often you will remember that the results section, the figures, the graphs, the tables, these are the bits of academic writing that people do first. So don't make mistakes, be clear, be effective, and show people what the answer is to the question that you pose with your study. In the discussion then, in the conclusions, many authors make the mistake of not telling the reader what the objectives are that were listed at the beginning of the study. We've talked about this before as well. Tell the reader in your discussion section what are the answers to the question that you've posed with your work. So the biggest mistake here would be to not clearly answer the question that your study aims to address, confusing the reader and not telling them what's the answer. And here again, writing in the present tense is your key to effective communication. The other, probably the biggest mistake or the biggest error, the biggest problem that non-native English speakers have writing in English, and often a big area of confusion, would be plagiarism. We've all done this. I've done this. You read something in another language. You think, that sounds great. I really understand that. I'm going to use it in my own work. If you don't cite, you are plagiarizing the work of others. So it's so important to do this right. And many authors actually don't realize that often you can plagiarize from yourself. You can steal from your own work if you republish a data set from a previous study without making your reader aware of this. If you submit a manuscript for publication that contains data, conclusions, or passages that have already been published without citing your previous publication, or indeed publishing multiple similar papers about the same study in different journals. Self-plagiarism is a big problem because most people aren't aware of it. Most people don't know that if you've, for example, published a figure or a bunch of text or some data in a previous paper, you actually have to cite yourself when you republish that information. So self-plagiarism is any attempt to take any of your own previously published text, papers, or research results and make it appear as if you're publishing it for the first time. Be aware of this in particular. We've discussed previously the fact that English speakers are generally reserved. The sentences that we tend to use are often short and simple. So probably the biggest mistake that non-native writers make is the use of long flowing paragraphs with never-ending adjectives, countless commas. These are, of course, frowned upon in most kinds of English language communication and writing. We love English. We also know that to be effective in English, keep it simple. Short sentences with limited punctuation and simple words that are accessible to your readers. This is how you can be effective publishing and writing your work as an international researcher. So we have talked in this video presentation about basic errors in English, the kinds of things that people tend to make mistakes when doing in English. And we've also talked a little bit about the different aspects, the different components of academic paper writing, and I hope to have given you some insights into the kinds of mistakes people make so that you can be more effective in the future with your English writing. Basic errors in English, different aspects of paper writing, and how you can be more effective putting these different sections together, as of course we build our articles together on this Top Edit Academic Writing and Publishing Bootcamp training series. Thank you so much for listening. Great to see you. My name is Gareth Dyke, and I hope that we will see you again in the next presentation in this series. Thank you so much for listening.